He's been away for a while. He's moved over 1,000 miles from home. Now, in the sunny state of Florida, a man rises from the shadows to bring you a higher class of movie reviews. His name is Andrew Cavanaugh, and this is Cavanaugh's Corner.
You know, I think this may be overkill. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Cavanaugh's Corner. Sorry this didn't come out sooner in the week, but sadly work and movie going times do not always coincide, so I want to apologize, but I think it actually is going to work out since so many reviews of this movie have come out already, not all of them being very forgiving. Of course, what am I talking about? I'm talking about Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice. This is a movie that has been in the headlines for the last week or so. It's not gotten very good reviews. Actually, it's gotten really horrible reviews, basically all throughout the country. And I have just recently seen it. It took me a little while to see it, so I apologize about not doing this sooner. But I wanted to see it in Imax 3D. And seeing it in Imax 3D is actually probably the best way to see it. Since most of the big scenes in the film were filmed in IMAX 3D. And the 3D actually helps in this movie. I'm not a big fan of 3D, but the 3D actually does give a little bit of depth to the movie that I think you probably wouldn't get otherwise. So if you get a chance to see it, please see it in IMAX 3D. Very highly recommended from me. I have my Cavanaugh's Corner copyrighted cue cards here. Say that 3 times fast. And I'm going to be talking about my view of the movie today. One thing I wanted to talk about right away is the other movie reviews I've seen for this film. I did not go into this film expecting anything even halfway decent, judging by the other reviews that I've seen. But I do want to say that I actually, up front, I want to say I actually really enjoyed this movie. I enjoyed it for different reasons that I'm going to talk about with you today. Most of them being the fact that I am a longtime comic book fan as well as a longtime movie buff. So seeing the two meld together in a way that they did in this movie, I think Zack Snyder, the director, actually did a good job melding the two forms together for this. Not just making it a film, but also making it a comic book adaptation in more ways than one. First off, I want to say that, I think the movie would be appreciated more if more movie critics that reviewed this film actually did some reading of older comics. Especially more than anything else, The Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller series, graphic novel. Actually, you can get it in a graphic novel form now. I think is probably the best thing to do before you go see this movie. There are a lot of differences between that. This is not a straight-up adaptation, but they do take a lot of inspiration from that story and put it in this. Especially, of course, the big showdown between Batman and Superman is almost exactly the way it was in the comics. Give or take a few changes, but it is almost identical. I think the first thing I want to talk about right away is Ben Affleck as Batman. I was actually sincerely worried about this since Affleck's prior superhero efforts were not that great. And yes, I'm talking about Daredevil, a comic book movie that I am not fond of at all. But I will say Ben Affleck is the best part of this film. He nails it as Bruce Wayne and Batman. He totally kills it in this movie. And I mean basically spot on as Bruce Wayne / Batman. He does an awesome job. He's just awesome. He is a total badass. There's no mercy. Batman shows no mercy in this movie, which is also, I guess, a point of contention among fans and others. But Batman is very brutal in this movie. Brutal to the point where he does actually kill people in this movie. We've seen him do that in the past, especially in the first 2 Batman movies featuring Michael Keaton. Even the Batman movies featuring Val Kilmer and George Clooney, Batman did kill people in those. Of course, they're all being self-defense kills, but Batman does take out quite a few people in this movie. I honestly didn't mind it. The Batman that's being portrayed in this movie is probably the darkest Batman ever. That's hard to beat considering, Christian Bale's Batman was also very dark. This is somehow even darker. It's kill or be killed kind of situations Batman finds himself in. And in most cases, he chooses to either maim or kill. And to be honest with you, I can't blame him. Once you see the movie, you'll understand. By the way, just so you know, I am not going to spoil anything for this movie. I may talk about one or two plot points, but they will not give away anything in the film that other reviews haven't already given away, or have some things that you haven't already seen in trailers. So don't worry. Please keep watching this review. I will not spoil anything. I promise. I promise. One of the things I think that's great, one of the other things I think that's really great about Batman v Superman is that they did not even attempt to completely reestablish Batman in this movie. You get the origin story kind of in passing, but I think everybody knows about the origin of Batman at this point, so I'm glad they did not go and totally have to go and do like a gigantic long flashback. I think they did a very good job talking about Batman's inner turmoil through imagery, and I think Zack Snyder is a master of imagery in film. Even though not all of his movies are extremely entertaining, I'm looking at you, Sucker Punch. Yes, I hate that movie, but he is a master of imagery. 300 is a masterpiece in that term. Watchmen is another one that's just masterful imagery. Story-wise, all these movies are not extremely complicated or a little overcomplicated, especially this film. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think, honestly, the film is beautiful to look at. It is gorgeous, and I think that's the main strength of the filmmaking aspect of the film, is that it is a gorgeous movie to look at, especially, like I said already, in Imax 3D. It is incredible in Imax 3D. I think the other thing that has to be mentioned is that Henry Cavill as Superman, he does his best. He does the best that he can do in the role. Sadly, him and a couple other actors in the film are not given much to do. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, or Diana Prince as we know her, is not in it very much, but when she is in it, she does the best that she can do what she's given. Obviously, again, she's not given much to do. And I think that's the main problem with the movie, is that some great actors are really not given much to do. Lawrence Fishburne is another one, as Perry White, is not given much to do in this film. And actually, it wasn't really given much to do in Man of Steel either, so hopefully the next film that we get, he'll kind of have a little more action going on. Although he did get a moment to kind of shine at the end of Man of Steel, this film, again, he's just kind of hanging around the office of the Daily Planet, which, I mean, in honesty, that's what Perry White does. But other than that, he doesn't really have any kind of standout moment in the film. Like I mentioned earlier, Gal Gadot doesn't really have much to do in it. Her setup as Wonder Woman is nice, but I think it's kind of it's lackluster in certain parts. Her entry in the film, her first appearance is kind of mez, but when she finally shows up as Wonder Woman, I was very pumped, and she did a great job with her action scenes, which I think are great. I think she did a wonderful job, and yes, she is smoking hot, which also helps. I think, honestly, she's the only other woman to play Wonder Woman in many years that's actually done a good job. Not since Linda Carter have we seen someone actually play Wonder Woman masterfully, and in this, with the little that she has to do with it, she does a good job. So good job, Ben Affleck and company. Everybody did a good job with that. Jeremy Irons is another one as Alfred. Very surprised with his performance. Again, he's not given much to do. Most of the time when you see him, he's either in the confines of the Batcave or hanging out around the ruins of Wayne Manor. But it is kind of cool to see him tinkering around with the various gadgets. It doesn't look like there's a Lucius Fox in this Batman universe, so Alfred is the one that kind of works on it, much like the Michael Keaton, Tim Burton timeline of those movies where Alfred is the one that's kind of working on everything. This one, it's a little more believable. He does look like an actual, like, he knows what he's doing with these things. But in terms of acting, I think Jeremy Irons actually gets the most laughs in the whole movie. He is a riot in this film, and I really love his little anecdotes. It's perfect. It's perfect, Alfred. Very actually reminiscent to me of Alfred from the original animated series that was on in the 90s. I love that style Alfred, and he is basically that Alfred come to life. So if you love the animated series, I think you'll really enjoy this adaptation of Batman. Even though it is a little different, his version of Alfred is perfect. I love him. And again, we didn't really even have to set him up. He's just Alfred, and he is who he is. And I really like that part of this movie. They did a good job with that. I think the one actor in the film that has been getting a lot of crap, and he's going to get a little more crap from me today, is Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. And I gotta be honest with you, I did not enjoy his performance. He is the only one in the movie that I thought he was a little too over the top. Everybody else was right on the level. If you can imagine it, this is the level where everybody was at, and everybody kind of stayed in the confines of that. Jesse Eisenberg ranked it up to 11, or 12 in this case, in terms of nutty psychotic. And honestly, Lex Luthor to me has never been a nutty, psychotic character. Anytime you see Lex Luthor, even Gene Hackman's portrayal or Kevin Spacey's portrayal in the not-so-hot Superman Returns, he's a nut. But he has this controlled anger. In this movie, he's just an out-and-out, total friggin' nutcase. And even with the tics, like this, he's always yelling, and it drove me nuts. And sadly, I think his kind of over-the-top performance kind of ruined it for me in certain scenes. But in the end, I mean, it is what it is. We got to live with his acting choices, and obviously Zack Snyder was okay with it. Otherwise, he would have never carried on with him throughout the filming of the production. I think the next thing I kind of want to talk about is there's a setup of a future film series. I'm not going to kind of go into detail here, but they pretty much set up the Justice League in this film, kind of midway through, a little more than midway through the movie. And it kind of was one of the parts of the movie that I felt was a little forced. Obviously, it's set up well, but the overall execution of it was not very entertaining. Interesting to see these other characters come about, but in the end, not really something that I was kind of going ape about. I think the introduction of other characters in the Marvel Universe was much better handled. This kind of felt contrived and a little forced, although the setup to it was good, because you're wondering what kind of information is going to come about through the movie. But in the end, it kind of felt like, oh, okay, it's the Justice League. Okay, cool. But that's about it. It didn't really seem to me like it was done to its full potential. Again, you know, I mean, the movie is already 2.5 hours long. It's a long film. Funny enough, I didn't actually think it felt long. It actually felt like just right to me for what they wanted to do with the story. But the main problem with me with the film, more than anything else, is that the story is kind of all over the place. The story is very jumbled. And I think it's because they were trying to accomplish so many things with this movie. You have Batman's storyline. You have Superman's storyline. You have Superman dealing with Lex Luthor. You have Lex Luthor devising some kind of diabolical plan to either stop or defeat Superman. And then you have an entire other storyline kind of with this Justice League thing. And then you have Wonder Woman's story, which is, again, kind of small and kind of glossed over. And then you have another story. I mean, there's a lot going on in this movie. And they intertwine well, but it's not extremely well, how can I say, executed. I think the main problem is the fact that they edited a lot out of the movie to make it 2.5 hours. If you haven't heard, there's actually going to be a director's cut of the film coming out in a few months on Blu-ray, which is actually a fairly quick release for a movie of this magnitude. But I guess they really wanted to show Zack Snyder's original cut of the film, which as far as I know is over 3 hours long. So we're going into like Gone with the Wind territory here, and I think I'm actually kind of excited to see it now, whereas before it was like 3 hours of this thing. But I'm kind of excited to see what more they're going to talk about in this film, because it did feel like there were certain parts that were missing. I'm kind of hoping that the restored director's cut kind of puts some of that stuff back, whatever it may be. But at the same time, I think we've gotten about as good of a movie as we're going to get with all these characters kind of intertwining and coming together. Actually, one thing this movie does that I'm probably going to get a little flack for, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that this movie has an extremely deep psychological look at Batman. Even more so than some of Nolan's films, and that's really saying something. I think Zack Snyder did a good job with establishing Batman as a very heady kind of character, whereas he's also very muscular, which I think Ben Affleck did a wonderful job. He is built like a brick shithouse in this movie. I gotta start working out. I really do. I really gotta start working out. But anyway, I think the idea of Batman being a psychological threat as well as a physical one is totally realized in this movie, and it's almost spot on. There's actually a fight scene in this movie that almost feels straight out of the Batman Arkham Asylum series, and I loved it. I actually honestly think of all the Batman films I've ever seen, A, it's the most brutal, and B, it's also pretty much the most Batman-like fight scene I've been hoping for in a long time. Even though it's pretty nasty, actually kind of pushes that PG-13 rating to its limits. But it's kind of what I've been waiting for in a Batman movie. Nolan's films, the fight scenes are amazing, but they're kind of quickly cut together. Some of them are actually very smoothly filmed, which I love about those films. But this one here, you kind of get the nasty brutality of Batman's fighting and gadget usage in it, which I think is amazing. If you can't tell, I'm a big Batman fan, so I really loved the idea of Batman being a brutal force to be reckoned with in this, and he's not afraid to take people out, which is kind of a new kind of threat that you get in this that you may not have seen in other Batman films, or at least Batman films for quite a while. It's not a movie that you should go to, though, if you're looking for non-stop action sequences. So what do I mean by non-stop action? This is not a Michael Bay film. This is not a Transformers film. This is not even a Marvel Comics superhero movie. This is a film about superheroes that just so happens to involve action. It is not an action film. I would not call it an action film. I would call it a drama before I call it anything, but is a drama action film. What do I mean by that? Most of the action is split up and it's very sparse. It's separated by quite a lot. It is not a out-and-out action movie. If you're looking for an out-and-out action movie, which sadly this movie has kind of been marketed as, you're not going to get it with this film. Maybe you'll get it with the director's cut. I don't know what they edited out of this movie. But the action scenes that you get are fantastic. If you love the characters that are featured in the film that I've already mentioned, you will most likely enjoy this film. There are quite a few. There's actually one or two. There's, I would say, two solid, really interesting plot twists in this film. Again, not going to ruin it, but the plot twists are very large tonal changes, and I was shocked by them. I was very surprised. I did not see them coming. They got me. And I think that was one of the best parts of the film. That as badly as the film is written in certain parts, again, I think that's due to the actual pacing of the film. I think because the editing that was done to it, I think that's the reason why we got the film that we did. But as sparse as the action is, when you get it, it's fantastic. And like I said, the plot, it may not be anything to write home about, but it is an interesting film. It did not feel overlong to me, like a lot of critics have said. I enjoyed the pacing of the film, even though, again, the story is all over the place. I still somehow enjoyed it. And I think, I think if they make another one, I think they'll kind of learn their lesson from this and hopefully make it a more concise film. And hopefully the director's cut will be just a tad better. Overall, I really enjoyed Batman vs. Superman, not only as a comic book fan, but also as a film goer. I thought it was not a masterpiece of sorts, but I thought it was a damn good superhero film that looked at superheroes in a different way, but also provided the crowd-pleasing aspects of what you get from a gigantic Hollywood blockbuster. Like this probably should have been, but sadly, I think the public eye has already been swayed away from this film, which is too bad. I just want to say that I enjoyed the film. I think you will too. Just don't go to the film looking for an out-and-out action spectacular. You will not get one. Although, the action when you get to it is spectacular. Thank you for tuning in again for Cavanaugh's Corner. My rating for this movie, out of good, bad, ugly, and great, I'd say it's a good film. I would not say it's a bad waste of time like a lot of other critics have said. And as always, I'm Andrew Cavanaugh. Keep reaching for the stars, and so will I. We love you. See you later. Bye-bye.